three. And goal!
UC could use some of those David DeJulius threes right about now, my lord. Welcome into another edition of Bearcat Blitz, presented by Bet Online. I'm your host from Cincinnati Bearcats on SI, Russ Heltman, and joined by my co-host across the way from Rivals Cincinnati site, thefrontoffisnews.com, where we are coming off of a 54-40 loss by UC to the Kansas Jayhawks, the lowest point total ever amassed by a UC team at Fifth Third Arena, their lowest point total as a program since beating UAB 40-38 on a Nick Van Exel game winner back in 1993. A lot different vibes coming off of this 40-point result compared to the vibes with Bob Huggins' team and that 40-point result a little over 30 years ago. 4-game losing streak, the first time in the Wes Miller era that the Cincinnati Bearcats have started a conference slate and gone 4 games into it without a win. We'll talk about that to start the show. We'll get into the kind of seemingly ends of all of the big news items, big news additions for Cincinnati football out of the transfer portal. Maybe 1 or 2 more potentially this cycle, but I would look for them to make some more of those big moves and some big additions, additional big additions in the spring cycle. 2 to 3 more of those, I would imagine, coming out of spring practice. We'll do that in the second portion of the show, second part of the show, and then we'll preview the Colorado matchup. 2 winless teams, the only 2 winless teams left in the Big 12 basketball sphere, are going up against each other on Wednesday night. UC, it's as close to a must win as it gets at this point of the calendar in mid-January. Really cannot afford to start 0-5 in conference play and expect them to hit their goals this season. When you're 0-5 in conference play, you're kind of just a bad basketball team at that point. No ifs, ands, or buts, especially if you lose to a team like Colorado with some of the matchup advantages UC is going to have that we'll highlight in the final portion of the show. Before all that, though, I want to tell you about Bet Online. It continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, Bet Online is your number one or your ultimate game day companion with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, to NHL and UFC. Bet Online is the number one sports betting source for the new year. From touchdowns to three-pointers and hat tricks, Bet Online has you covered on every game, every play, and every win. Bet Online, the game starts here. Neil, the offense, it's continued to be the biggest talking point for this UC basketball team, the biggest issue for this UC basketball team, and it's never been a bigger issue coming off of Saturday's result. The lowest point total of the season. I already ran down how historically bad that offensive performance was in terms of not only just UC basketball in general, but basketball at home. To put up a 40-point outing in front of your home fans, you shoot 30.5% from the floor, 3 of 22 from outside, many of those wide open outside misses. The only players to hit shots from deep in this game were Josh Reed, Arrington Page, and Dan Skillings once again. He's really the only guy with any kind of offensive pulse consistently over the first 4 conference games of the season. 8 total assists, Neil. They turn the ball over 12 times. They get out rebounded by Kansas 44-42. Fast break points, they post just 4 fast break points for a team that can't operate in the half court and now is seemingly, for some reason, refusing to push the ball down the floor, with, even though it has so much purported and broadcasted before the season, boosted up athleticism. There was talk this team was going to run, that the depth that they had across the roster was going to allow them to play more press, to be able to get more easy buckets in transition. Well, Neil, they're outside the top 200 in transition points right now. They're outside the top 300 in pace. And this is a team in Cincinnati that has 0 offensive identity, and let alone offensive identity. They don't have any offensive pillars to lean on going into Colorado on Wednesday.
Yeah, no, most certainly, Russ. And I mean,
speak about the Kansas game, 3 for 22 from behind the arc. And on top of that game, Russ, look at what Cincinnati did well in the first half of that game. 18 of their first 25 points came in the paint. You know how many of those came in the second half? Just 6. 6 points in the paint in the second half. Meanwhile, 30% from the field, Russ, it's not gonna do anything when you have guys like Simas Lukosius, Dede,
like too.
3 for 24 on Saturday. You got to find some kind of offense. With Simas Lukosius putting up a 1 for 10 performance.
What is he, Neil? 7 for 41 over the past 7 games from outside.
7 for 41, correct. So Cincinnati, they have to find a way to push the tempo. I mean, you and I have talked about it, Russ. They can't operate in the half court, it appears right now.
Just slamming their heads against the wall, back and forth, over and over in the half court. As you see my hair do crazy dances right there.
It's the offense is just stifled. That's, to say the least, it's stifled. And Wes Miller even kind of emphasized it, that there's a lid on it for Cincinnati. And that lid is about 3 times the size of the rim, because it has not been, that lid has been growing. It has felt like over the last 2 weeks, because Cincinnati just simply has not been able to buy a bucket. And I mean, in that Kansas game too, Russ, there was a lot of things Cincinnati did well and a lot of things they did poorly. What happened there in Saturday, I mean, you hold Kansas, think about it, Russ, you hold Kansas to the lowest amount of points under Bill Self in program history under Bill Self in 54 in a win.
Was that the lowest point total of a Bill Self team, really?
The lowest point total in a Bill Self win throughout his coaching era, which has been 24 years at Kansas. 54 points. And I mean, Cincinnati did just about everything they needed to win this game. If you would have said, oh, let's hold Kansas to just 54 points, you would think you might be in this game, which they were up until about that 6-minute mark. And I think, Russ, I know you and I have talked about it. The momentum changed following the wide open missed dunk from Arrington Page. Yes. Once that dunk was missed, it was kind of momentum shifted from there. And that was it. But Cincinnati, they got to find ways.
And after that, in that final 7 minutes, Neil, 16-3 run by Kansas. Cincinnati finishes one of its final 11 shots.
From the field, yeah.
One of its final 11 shots. And that's what I want to talk about right now is, who is the alpha on this team? There isn't one right now. There is not an alpha on this team. No one is taking the bull by the horns. No one in that moment on Saturday in that game went and made a play. Kansas's veterans went and made a play. Hunter Dickinson came to play throughout the contest. 8th double-double of the year. Another instance where UC cannot slow down, or I'm not going to say that. They did slow down Hunter Dickinson, but they didn't slow him down enough to overcome how bad their offense was on the other end, and you still allow him to get 12 boards in this game, 44 total for Kansas to Cincinnati's 42. But, Neil, there is no offensive closer on this roster right now, and the guy I'm looking at most with the magnifying glass is Jizzle James. He's the lead ball handler for this team. He's the lead guard for this team. He was supposed to have a breakout season, a breakout sophomore campaign, and he continues to shoot bad mid-range jump shot after bad mid-range jump shot after bad mid-range jump shot after bad mid-range jump shot. It's just over and over and over again. The shot selection is so poor. He is not an elite jump shooter in the mid-range at all. The numbers are what the numbers are. He is not elite in that. And if you're not an elite mid-range jump shooter, you cannot consistently take that shot in 2025. This isn't 1976. This isn't 1986. This isn't 2006. Mid-range jumpers are a thing of the past. They are a dying dinosaur because they are such an inefficient shot and so difficult to hit at a consistent rate. He did it last year on a small sample size in a one-season slate. It's coming back to the opposite direction in 2024-25. And what he has to do, and what everybody on this team has to do, is get to the rim more and get to the free throw line. What did we see, Neil, in this game? 2 free throws. I'm raising my voice because it's so absurd. Two of them from a Cincinnati team that is veteran-laden, that has a size advantage in almost every single game it goes out on the floor. You go into this game and you get 2 free throws, albeit the whistle was getting swallowed a little bit. There were some fouls that should have gone Cincinnati's way that they ultimately didn't call. But it's not like it was crazy egregious on the other side. They only had 7 free throws shot in the entire contest.
3 fouls called in the first half. Think about that. I
Right.
mean, the first
Like, you
whistle
have
didn't come until 6 minutes in the first half.
there has to be, Neil, somebody that grabs this roster, that grabs this opportunity, that grabs this depth chart by the shoulders, shakes the team and says, I'm going to go get it done. I'm going to put the pedal to the metal. I'm going to get to the free throw line. I'm going to get to the rim. I'm going to create some open jump shots. I'm going to hit an open jump shot. You're getting paid to score. These guys are getting paid to put the ball through the hoop. Almost all of them on this roster are getting paid to do that. And they're not doing it well enough. And you have to really reevaluate, especially if you're Jizzle James, how you are getting that ball to the hoop, let alone through it. Mid-range jump shot is not working at all. And it's something he has to change. One
And
of
I think
6 in this game, 1 for 2 at the free throw line. Jizzle James was the only player to attempt a free throw. He should be attempting, Neil, 8 to 9 free throws a game.
Mhm.
He should. He should be attempting that much. Like, he shouldn't be I don't want to see any games the rest of the season where Jizzle James takes more than 3 mid-range jump shots at all. It's not working for this offense. It's not working for him. And for a player that's so athletic, so talented, so gifted, so strong, to sit there and back away from the screen, to deny the ball screen, to be so passive in ball screen action game after game after game, it's destroying the offense in the half court. It's destroying the offense overall. And when your point of attack player like Jizzle James is playing this poorly, you get 40 points across 40 minutes.
And I think too, Russ, the biggest thing with Jizzle James's struggles right now is you saw what he was able to do so well last year. He was able to get to the foul line because that little jump stopper, that first move he made, he could draw defenders up in the
Right.
air.
And they're not
Teams are not
biting on
biting
that
on
anymore, Neil. That's a great point. Great point.
They are not biting on the pump fake right away, and they're sitting on the spin move and contesting just about everything. That's been the difference maker from a season ago to where we are now. Jizzle James has not been able to get those guys in the air on that mid-range jumper to get to the foul line. But in order for them to be successful, you got to start developing a floater. You got to find ways to get to the rim. But the mid-range shot, like you mentioned, Russ, some of them are good looks, but some of them just aren't falling. But there's some shots you want better. You want a guy with Jizzle James's size, 6'3", 215 pounds, 210, 215 pounds, to get downhill and attack. We know the kind of athlete he is. And we know
That's
he
so
is
frustrating, Neil. That's why it's so mind-boggling, because he's so talented. He has the skills to do these things, and he just continues to deny the action.
Yeah, and that's even worth noting. He went through a whole warm-up with his individual trainer before the game Saturday, well before
Yeah,
games.
you were there for that a few hours before the game. I took my time with all the snow and ice and my Hyundai Accent, but shout out to Neil for getting there early to see that.
I mean, it was an extensive workout, and shots just simply weren't translating to the games. But it was everything they were working on was the shots that he basically took in the game. So I mean, it's just all about finding that groove, and hopefully the slump breaks soon, because Russ, as you mentioned, tomorrow is a must win, or Wednesday is a must win for Cincinnati. Because if you start 0-5, it could get real hairy, especially with the potential this team has. But they have to find ways to get Jizzle James going, to get Simas Lukosius going. Because, Russ, we talk about Jizzle James. Simas Lukosius averaged nearly 15 points per game in non-conference slate. What is he averaging right now? 6 points per game in Big 12 play. And for somebody who is shooting nearly 60% from the field in non-conference, has to find a way to translate that. But you can't have these 1 for 8 performances, 1 for 10, 2 for 10, 11, whatever it might be. Cincinnati has to find ways to get those two guys the ball. But Russ, for me, the offense, they're playing on the perimeter. They want to be a team that plays on the perimeter, but they got to find ways to get this ball inside and attack teams downhill. You saw what they were able to do versus Kansas in the first half when they were able to do so. They had Kansas worn down in the first half when they got downhill and attacked. It was clear as day to see. But the second half, they just could not knock anything down. And I believe they were held to, Russ, what was it? Just 15 points in the second half, where they shot. Yep. Let's see the numbers here for the second half. 6 for 28 in the second half. And 2 of 13 from 3. And then in the second half, you hold Kansas 0 of 13 from behind the arc. Their defense was there.
They got outscored by 15 and a half that the other team didn't hit a 3.
Yeah. And the offense is just stifling right now.
Yeah. Yeah. You mean stifling? Are you trying to say stifling?
Yeah, stifling. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Offense really, really bad right now. Kind of as bad as it can be. Defense, though, elite. Like the defense is good. That's what's so frustrating about this team is the defense is so good. It makes you scratch your head and wonder, how can they not create more than 4 fast break points when you were allowing a team to shoot just 35% from the floor? Like that does not compute to me. How can you not create 10 points off of a team that's missing 65% of its shots? Maybe that'll switch against Colorado. We'll discuss that in the final segment here. Take a quick break and get to the football side of things. Real quick before we do that, though, switch up in the rotation for this game. Just wanted to note that CJ Frederick gets more minutes here. Josh Reed gets more minutes here. Connor Hickman may not see him again for a bit. Sounded like they're trying to let him rest on multiple lower body injuries that Hickman is going through. That's what Wes Miller told the media after the game. So he did not play in this contest. And it's obvious that Hickman's going through something, Neil. I mean, he has just been a shell of himself in terms of just burst, production, everything. Like, shout out to Connor. He's trying to gut through it. And you always appreciate players that are trying to gut through injuries. But at this point, it's like you got to weigh, is it getting to a point to be detrimental for the team and for Hickman's health? And they've kind of leaned to that thinking, and they're trying to give him some time to rest and recuperate. So you're down a guard in that sense, and it's forced them to go to CJ Frederick, who was a positive plus minus in his 16 minutes, a season high 16 minutes, but 0 for 4, 0 for 2 from deep. If he's going to get minutes, CJ Frederick, you really need him to be able to hit one. Would be great to see 2, but just one outside shot in his minutes is what you need him to hit per game. And that just did not happen. And it was obviously part of the big offensive issues for Cincinnati across a 54-40 loss. Getting animated in this first segment just because it's right there for Cincinnati. It's right there. If these guys can just figure out a way to hit. I talked to Brent Young of Bearcat Journal before the game. I was like, the bar to clear, Brent, 40% shooting as a team. They didn't hit close to that, Neil. It's contest 30.5% in the game. They didn't even hit over 75% of the way.
And I think it's too, 40%. Russ, worth noting. I think the over under was like 137 in this game. Like you don't even crack.
It was 138. It went down to 135, and they didn't even come within 25 points of hitting that over under. Two teams that are now, I believe, a combined 3-25 hitting overs this year. Just keep that in mind, people, when that number pops up for the Colorado contest. Because I don't project, we'll get to it at the end, but I don't think there's going to be many points in that one either. Taking a quick break here on Bearcat Blitz. Neil, from the hardwood to the gridiron here, I don't know. What do you think? Do you see any more big additions happening in the coming days, the coming weeks before they start to dive fully into winter workouts and wrap things up on the portal? Maybe a backup tight end before spring ball, but they might just be willing to see what the depth looks like there as well and address that in the middle of April.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Now, right now, I think we're looking at 12 commits, Russ. Obviously, the big hope was landing Connor Moore.
14 commits.
14, okay. So the big commit they were trying to land was Connor Moore, who they held on campus last week, went up to Michigan State where the Spartans were able to kind of seal the deal.
That was a tough double punch on Saturday afternoon, Neil. You had the loss to Kansas go final, and I think Connor Moore committed to Michigan State like 35 minutes later.
Yeah, so that was a big kind of blow, because on top of it, once you saw the reports that said, oh, he's canceling the Ohio State visit, well, clearly Ohio State's playing for a natty still, but cancels the Ohio State visit, and then he only takes 2 visits, Michigan State and Cincinnati. You thought you felt pretty good about it, and then he goes up north to Michigan State. So overall, I mean, that's a big time loss. But right now, I think we're probably going to be sitting at that 14 commit mark, Russ, probably until the spring. I mean, you might get a backup tight end here or there, but on top of it, I think outside of that, I think you're probably going to hold put until about the spring season and how spring camp opens up, and then see what happens after that segment there.
Yeah, shout out the Bearcat Bunch on X. Give them a follow. Awesome breakdowns of just football scholarships and just news and notes around Bearcats football and basketball. But they note that you see up to 86 scholarships now with 14 additions this portal. And when we're looking at spots to probably keep an eye out for assessing in the spring, I mean, number one, Neil, would be that tackle spot. We'll see how it develops over the coming months. We'll see who slots in there among candidates ranging from Buford, DeAndre Buford, that is, to Ethan Green, Xavier Lozowicki. I mean, Sam Cray-Page, Zach Clark potentially mixing in there. Nolan Latalipe gonna get a look in there as well.
You
So
have
about
Aiden
five.
Pastoriza as well, the big guy.
Yeah, Aiden Pastoriza. So like 6 candidates there for either tackle spot. I would say neither is locked in at this point of the calendar. And then you mentioned backup tight end behind Gavin Grover and Joe Royer, one of those blocking tight ends. Probably see that addition in the spring as well. Outside of that, though, I think they've done a really good job of bolstering the depth and hitting key weak points on this roster. You nailed down kicker. You nailed down the defensive back room with additions like Matthew McDoom, Taden Barnes, Xavier Williams, Christian Harrison. You nail down interior offensive line by getting Gavin Gerhardt back. You add Taron Tayo. I think you're feeling good with Jake Wheelock or Evan Tangastal, whoever ends up taking that other interior offensive line spot alongside Tayo and Gavin Gerhardt. Tackle, you're iffy right now, but you were holding out hope for Connor Moore, so I'm not going to throw a lot of stones at that situation there. Wide receiver, they boosted up tremendously with 4 wide receiver additions, most likely headlined by Cyrus Allen out of Texas A&M and Caleb Goody as well out of Colorado State. Running back, they solidify as well into Tawee Walker, a veteran addition there to be part of that triple-headed attack with Pryor, Tawee Walker, and Chance Williams, who took a red shirt last year and can be an impact player coming off of his first year with the program. I like how this roster is formulating, Neil, and it's largely left them with a top half of the country, a top 50 transfer total haul, which is what they have been ranked on 24/7 Sports, 48th nationally, and they actually haven't factored in the Noah Jennings commit on 24/7 Sports, so it probably could tick up into the top 45 if that gets factored in the next couple of weeks. So all in all, if we're giving grades for the portal this cycle, I'd go B+. I think it was a solid B+ haul for this program. If they would have gotten Connor Moore, it probably would have inched into the A range for me, a solid A, because you would have largely no question marks starter-wise at any of the major spots. But with offensive tackle still somewhat of a question mark coming off of this winter cycle, most likely wrapped up for the most part. I'm going to give the Bearcats a B+ right now. I don't need your, I'll be putting you on the spot a little bit with their letter grade, Neil, but just overall, the tie-up on this group, I think they've done a solid job for a 3rd consecutive transfer portal cycle of upping the talent base for Scott Satterfield and the coaching staff to work with.
Yeah, no, most certainly. I'm right there with you, Russ. I would give them a B+ because of what they're doing right now. Obviously, the wide receiver group was the biggest essential group of need, and I mean, they've taken leaps and bounds there. This could be a really good wide receiver group. I would give that their strongest addition there, and then the defensive backs room as well. I think that's going to be your second best.
Matthew McDoom could be a huge.
Could be a huge. So
I mean, he's already on the all-name team for college football, so there's that too.
Same with Christian Harrison. Could be 2 guys that could come in and make big-time impacts for Cincinnati. I think those are going to be 2 guys you might even see potentially both be starting next year. So on top of it, I thought those 2 additions were huge. But on top of it, I'd give them a B+ too, Russ. I'm right there with you.
Solid portal so far for Cincinnati. And the biggest question is, how big of a leap can Brendan Sorsby take again? I mean, Neil, he elevated his game last year from freshman to sophomore year, sophomore to junior year. How big a leap does he end up taking? It's the biggest question mark, and it's the biggest way that UC can maximize the value of its NIL dollar is that jump that Brendan Sorsby makes. There is no accounting for how big that could be, and he's already locked in on his deal. Whatever he ends up outperforming that by is just all gravy, and it's all great for the Bearcats' pursuit of a bowl game this season. And you'd love to see him have competing for the Big 12 title down the stretch. We've seen teams like Arizona State turn it around in 1 year. We've seen how quickly and how tight-knit and how tightly contested this football conference can be. Can Cincinnati be in the mix in the final 3 weeks, I think, is a good goal to set for the Bearcats program, because that would mean they were already probably locking down a bowl game berth in that path as well. Take a quick break here and preview the Colorado matchup 0-4 versus 0-4. Two teams that are winless in the Big 12 so far on the hardwood. Right here on Bearcat Blitz. Neil, Cincinnati likely with its easiest overall caliber of opponent left on the board the rest of the season. It's them and Utah right now between the Colorado Buffaloes and the Utah Utes in terms of the easiest matchup remaining for Cincinnati. They hold a 69.6% chance to win this road game at altitude in Boulder, Colorado at the CU Event Center. It's an awesome venue. I saw Colorado play Arizona State there a few years ago, 6 years ago now. Really, really cool place to see a game. Boulder is an awesome campus. Highly recommend every Bearcats fan try to make a pilgrimage there for a basketball or football game at some points. But Colorado 0-4 in conference deal, 9-6 overall, and Cincinnati 10-5 overall, 0-4 in conference. Colorado enters this game ranked, let's pull up the matchup here, 87th in the net, 86th on KenPom, while Cincinnati is 41st in the net and 38th on KenPom as of this recording. Neil, to me, it all starts with, can Cincinnati figure out a way to run? Can you get going in transition? If they can't figure out any way to get going in transition this game, it's going to come right down to the wire, and they may end up losing the contest in another low-scoring battle. I don't know how else I could put it. If you try to slam your head against the wall like I showcased for everybody earlier in the show in the half court, then you're going to have a huge issue going up against this Colorado defense that isn't great, but is solid in the half court and is solid overall. They're going to be able to give you some problems. They're going to be able to throw a decent group at you. 65th overall, Neil, and adjusted defensive rating on KenPom. They do not allow many assists. They do not allow teams to operate well in the half court. When you think about Colorado giving up just 11, here we go. Where is it? There we go. 11.9 assists per game, 93rd nationally there. Neil, they have to find a way to run here. They have to find a way to get going in tempo. UC is 309th nationally in tempo so far this season. Colorado 161st. So they're going to be willing to run in this game. They're going to be willing to kind of give Cincinnati some opportunities to run. When you think about Colorado turning the ball over 15 times per game this season, that's the 18th most turnovers per game nationally. If they can't find a way to get 15 to 20 transition points here, Neil, they're going to have a huge problem winning this game. And they're set up to be able to do that against the Colorado team that turns the ball over a lot and is willing to run at that.
Yeah, no, most certainly, Russ, too. And this is a dangerous game for Cincinnati because it's a must-win game for both teams. Not only that, but it's Colorado 8-2 at home. That's the thing. Colorado likes to get out and push the tempo, but they also like to defend their home court. They are very good at home, to say the least. And Russ, we know what this Colorado team's capable of doing. I mean, look at what they did earlier in the season at the Maui Invitational. They shocked the world by knocking off the back-to-back national champions. So, I mean, this is a Colorado team that's going to come out hungry. They're going to want to push the tempo, so it's going to be interesting to see how does Cincinnati respond to that. But on top of it, Cincinnati's got to find a way to get that offense moving and up the pace in this one. You got to find ways to really push the tempo.
Find Aziz and lob. So Aziz can't go 0 for 3 from the floor again in this one and think that you're going to come away with a comfortable win. You got to attack that paint. Yeah. And it starts with Aziz Bandago, Dylan Mitchell, and Dan Skillings.
Yeah, no, most certainly. And if they can get those three guys going, Cincinnati should be able to take this game, hopefully. But they got to find ways to get those guys the ball early. You got to find ways to get paint touches and get the ball close to the rim and be effective inside. Because once you get effective inside, it'll open everything else up, hopefully. But right now, Cincinnati is in desperate needs of something. And hopefully that something is a couple lobs on Wednesday night in Colorado that will open things up and hopefully some new energy and some new light, because Cincinnati is desperately searching for just about everything right now despite being 0-4 in conference play. They're playing for March right now. Essentially, you go 0-5, it's gonna be a uphill battle for Cincinnati down the final 15 games of conference play.
1,000%. And flipping to the defensive side of the floor for Cincinnati, real quick, we'll do that in just a second. But I mean, Neil, like you gotta figure out a way to run here. You have to figure out a way on the road to get easy points in transition. You score 4 transition points in this contest, I think the Bearcats are going to end up being a loser if that's how many transition points end up having. Defensively, Neil, this is where I think and why I think the Bearcats win this game. It's not because of their offense by any means. It's because of how poorly Colorado matches up against the things that Cincinnati does well. I just don't know how defensively Cincinnati is going to give up 60 points in this game. Colorado is not a good shooting team, 114th nationally in field goal percentage, and most of their points, most of their big high range output games come from great 3-point shooting, 35.3%. That's top 110 nationally. Not going to work against UC, who has arguably, Neil, the best 3-point defense in the entire country this year, allowing 27.1% from deep. That's the 5th best percentage allowed in the country. And teams are making the fewest threes per game of any team defense in the nation. UC opponents are hitting 4.9 threes per game. That's the fewest makes of any opponent for any defense in the country. UC, I will say it, has the best 3-point defense in the country. I don't see how Julian Hammond is going to be able to get his points in this one. 14.3 points per game. He's a 41.4% 3-point shooter on 4.7 attempts per game. That's going to get shut off, in my opinion. RJ Smith, their other 3-point marksman, 49% on 3.3 attempts. I see him getting shut down. And if those guys aren't scoring, it's going to make things way, way more difficult on the front court for Cincinnati, for CU, and a front court that relies heavily on free throws, getting to the line, getting those freebies against the defense that relies heavily on not allowing free throws, not allowing freebies, making things super, super, super difficult in the half court. Colorado ranks 66 nationally. They make 16 free throws per game they're averaging, Neil, 15.3 made free throws in their 4 games, in their past 4 games, their 4-game losing streak over the last 4 games. I don't see them hitting 15.3 free throws at all in this one. Maybe not even hitting 8 free throws in this game with how well UC defends and how low their foul rate is on the season. 20th nationally, UC is, Neil, giving up just 14.5 free throw attempts per game, let alone makes. So I just don't see how the numbers compute for CU's offense to get to 60 points. And I think Cincinnati will be able to find their way, find somehow to get to that 60-point threshold. Give me the Bearcats 66-54. What's your score prediction for this one as we close out?
Yeah, I'm going to go 66-62. I think it's going to be a close game down to the wire, but Cincinnati's going to have to step up there defensively in order to get that offense going. It's going to be an uphill battle. Everybody knows what's playing at altitude can really kind of change things. It's the first time that they're ever playing at Colorado as well this season as members of the Big 12. So you know the environment's going to be there. Overall, I'm going 66-62 in favor of the Bearcats, and they will become 1-4 in Big 12 play on Wednesday night.
Need this win. UC does need it really, really bad. And Neil and I see it happening just as I laid out the matchup issues for CU's offense against this UC defense, which is, I think, justifiably flying under the radar in this 4-game losing streak compared to their offense and how poorly it's playing. But the defense, y'all, it has not wavered one bit. And overall, Cincinnati sitting at, where are they nationally? 5th, 7th nationally in adjusted defensive rating on KenPom. Pretty good. Need that offense to go from 119th, Neil, to closer to 19th nationally for Cincinnati to hit the ceiling that at least I thought they could hit this season. I've never felt more wrong watching the Cincinnati offense over the past couple weeks. We'll see if they can make me feel more right on Wednesday. For Neil Meyer, I'm Russ Eltman. This has been Bearcat Blitz on the Believe Network, presented by Bet Online. Enjoy the action, everybody.
This is the second. 15 seconds left. Shot clock off. 4-point game. DeJulius puts up a 3.